Welcome to the Geological Society of the Oregon Country Meetup. We are the oldest collaboration of amateurs and professional geologists in the Pacific Northwest. We have been stopping the car and pulling over and picking up rocks for the past 85 years. And today we're going to, well, something exciting is happening, which is we are going to go back to in-person meetups in addition to our online meetups. And so I'm putting in the chat right now the link to our meetup poll, because we'd like to get your opinions. Some of you are going to want to continue with the online, or you have to because you're out of state, and we want you to keep coming. And some of you are going to want to be in person. Some of you are going to want to do both. And maybe some of you aren't going to want to come at all. But in any event, we want to hear what your opinion is about when we should meet. Should we keep this Saturday slot? Should we move it to another day? We could have it on, we could do the online on a weekday evening. We could have another venue, all of those things. Let us know. Also, let us know what you think of the format. Suggest any topics and any other suggestions you have about our, for example, our use of the Meetup platform or anything like that. So that poll is, it's a short poll, I promise. And you can find the link in the chat now. If you don't get it now from the chat, or you have trouble copying from the chat, it's also on our website, gsoc.org. We are a membership organization. Membership is required for our field trips, but not for our lectures, not for this meetup, and not for any other purposes. So, but we do encourage you to become a member. Any additional donations that we receive or profit for our nonprofit go to supporting our grad students and student friends at Portland State University. Okay, Friday night lectures. Sheila, what is coming up as far as our Friday night lectures?
We are in a flux, like I said, and trying to transition to in-person, but our September meeting will still be remote. And it's always the second Friday of the month, except for October, we're going to have a different one, but normally it's the second Friday of each month. And we are going to have Dr. Bill Orr is going to putting together a talk right now of scientists that he's always admired and their contributions to the science of geology. So, and as you may not know, or you may know that Dr. Bill Orr is the author of several books on the geology of Oregon, geology of the Pacific Northwest. He taught at the University of Oregon for his career, and he actually managed the Glomar Challenger, the deep sea drilling program for the National Science Foundation. And so he's had a chance to really meet a lot of top scientists in the field of geology, and he wants to put together a collection of them and what their contributions were to geology. He was a player in plate tectonics, discovering plate tectonics, which is pretty exciting. A pretty exciting story. And yeah, so, and then October we'll have Andrew Meggs from Oregon State University. Yeah, I got Andrew, and then Josh Roaring in November. And both of them, requested prefer an in-person format. So that's, you know, we are really trying to get on board with getting back into Kramer Hall. And I have a few other ideas beyond that, but they haven't gelled yet. So
I understand we might have a hydrogeologist from Umatilla that might
I would love to. Yeah, she needs to contact me.
All right.
And we'll get her scheduled too. And I have a few other people. So Kate, keep me in mind and send me an email, and we'll get you on the schedule. So we've had some really wonderful, fantastic lectures over the years. And like I said, we've been going since 1935. What can I say? this is our normal format now would be in Kramer Hall, which we've got an old black and white picture. You can see the nice big screen seating for 100 and something people. I think it's 120. And sometimes we fill it, sometimes not. So that's it.
Thank you, Sheila. Do we have anyone? I don't know if our field trip coordinator is here to talk about our field trips, but Sheila, I know you have one coming up. So are those field trips filled at this point?
I'm not sure. I think we've had a few people had to cancel. I think there's still a little bit of, there's still a opening. Clark, can you speak to that? Clark is also a leader, and so is Clay Kelleher. And I think there's a couple of openings that just recently opened up. It was full, but we will do, yeah, go ahead, Clark.
I think there's one opening right now.
Okay, so there's
for Mary's Peak Table Mountain.
Yeah. Now, our field trips are usually local in the Pacific Northwest, at least, and led by experts, and not very expensive. You know, and then we put together this one that's coming up. It could be done in. Well, no, it's not. It can't be done from one day, but it was originally designed as one that could be a day from the Portland area down to Mary's Peak and then back home. We're trying to do some local ones that won't take too big a block of time and add them to our normal field trips, which usually take 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
We also have a trip to the Colito for later in September as well.
And is that trip fully subscribed?
Carol's the best one to ask that. She's been keeping track of the numbers. I believe it is.
I suspect it is, yeah.
Yeah.
All of our trips filled up. We had a backlog, of course, of people who want to get out of the house and get on our trips. And so this year they really filled up quick.
We had to go to a lottery system just so that we could kind of equally give the opportunity to everybody. Because our membership has grown. And then, like I said, everybody's been so cooped up, they just can't wait to get out. And so we've had, you know.
So if you didn't get in this year, be patient. We'll have trips available next year. And we should expand some of our metro trips as well. So we'll have some shorter trips.
We can have metro trips, and then I can lead you on a really good trip across the Willamette Valley.
Oh, that's right.
From the west side to over to the east side. And I'll teach you how to make a geologic cross section. So,
Sheila, you're going to show us some geological diagrams a little later on in the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, any other announcements before we begin? Before I welcome Steve Erickson and Dave Wilhelm of the Minnesota Geology Society, but I want to make sure that there aren't any other announcements from our board members or other folks in our GSOC community. I'm not seeing any hands, so Steve and Dave, tell us about this magical place called Minnesota and your organization there.
I guess I can start. Dave Wilhelm. I'm a past president of the GSM and currently a field trip coordinator and liaison officer. So I got a couple of hats. Our society is a little bit younger than yours, 1938, but we go back a long ways. So
very good.
And our typically we have lectures during what's basically the school term from September to early May. We have lectures every other Monday night with time off in the December and most of January. And typically those, except for a banquet at the first lecture and the last lecture, typically those are at a lecture hall on the University of Minnesota campus, which is centrally located in Minneapolis. And Steve is the person that's been putting that program together for maybe 20 years, Steve. I don't know, you've been doing it a long time, longer than I know about it. You're muted, Steve.
He's on his iPhone, so I know that's a little tricky, but we'll wait.
He's swiping.
He's swiping. You can see him swipe.
Trying to figure out how to unmute.
Can you unmute him, Paul, as host?
I don't know if I can.
I don't think you can.
I don't think you can.
When you unmute somebody, they have to accept.
Oh,
it.
they have to agree to it. I think it's
Yeah.
a privacy.
And that
All
only
right,
makes
There
now I
you
got it.
go.
I found it, found the button. I'm not very good with the iPhone stuff. My communication skills date back to being in the Coast Guard when I learned to send and receive Morse code. I can't find the Morse code key for the Apple computer, so. The Geological Society of Minnesota, like I said, was 1938, and we have been giving lectures, and I'm setting up the lecture series for this year. For the fall, we will be doing Zoom lectures, except for the September 20th one, which is at a local restaurant. But our first will be Monday, October the 4th. Larry Pierce of the Missouri Geological Society will be talking about earthquake science and the major earthquakes impact on the new Madrid seismic zone that's in southeastern Missouri, and kicked off some of the very powerful earthquakes there over 100, almost 200 years ago now, 200 years ago now. And you can see
Sharing my
our
screen.
schedule listed here.
So people
Yeah.
can read what you're saying.
Uh-huh. And then we're going to have Lon Abbott, teaching professor from the University of Colorado, give us history of Colorado. November 1st, he's got listed as TBD, but it's actually Kenneth Taylor, state geologist from North Carolina, going to give this geology of North Carolina. We have Ben Freeman, who's going to be changing jobs here in the next couple of months, but he's going to give us a talk about Ontario, which is just to the north of Minnesota. We have an environmental scientist from the South Dakota Geological Survey going to give us a talk about the Black Hills. And then Sheila Alson and William Moore are going to talk about assembling Oregon here. All these are open to the public. You'll have to get a link through us, and you're certainly welcome to join us. We are also starting to post stuff on YouTube, and a very exciting possibility might exist if all the different geological societies, such as ours, the amateur ones, not the GSA and the
Right.
AAPG, those stuff, but if the amateur groups like ourselves and you, and possibly there's a group in Georgia we've been talking to, one in Rochester, New York we've been talking to, maybe we could pool our resources together and set up a joint YouTube channel for anybody interested in earth sciences. That might be an interesting way to go.
That is
we
such a
talk more
brilliant
about-
idea. And I think we have Central Oregon Geosciences Society, our sister club here in Bend, might want to join that as well. Steve, I think that is such a fantastic idea. We've been looking for ways of connecting with other amateur clubs, and having a YouTube channel where we've had our content would be a start for that. We could also have a social media outlet for that, so we could bring people in on Twitter or other.
Yeah.
Let's continue
Dave,
that
Wilhelm, do you have
conversation.
the address for our deal? I don't have it right up in front of me right now, but do you have that? Maybe you could send that on to the people
Yeah,
in Oregon.
I can send it on, but it's real easy. Our
Okay.
website is gsmn.org. And typically we have our lecture schedule up there, and we don't have the one coming up yet because it's still, but we'll have it up there probably in the next week because we're still working on it. But we do have lectures. You can find lectures from all the past years. I mean, the titles and there's also a link to our YouTube channel. We have some of the lectures from last year, about a half a dozen of them now, and a few more were recorded. Not everybody wants to be recorded, but the majority we do record, and we're still getting them out there. So you're welcome to go there and go to the YouTube channel. If you see something that interests you, watch it. Our lectures are typically an hour, and then we have Q&A, and then so we're typically done within 90 minutes.
Right.
So usually a pretty good Q&A too. It's usually pretty nice to get.
We get a lot of very interesting lectures, and some of the people come in and say they really enjoy talking to us because they know they're going to be getting great questions and great opportunities for everybody to learn a lot. So we also associate ourselves a lot with the Institute of Lake Superior Geological.
Yeah,
What's
the Institute of Lake Superior Geology, or ILSG, unlike our organization, which is intended for geology enthusiasts, not, and we do have a fair number of people that have been trained in geology, but the majority of us are not trained. Like me, I am not trained. I was a software engineer, for example. But ILSG is more of a professional organization, but they're happy to have people come to their conferences. It's basically every year it's held on either a province or a state that borders Lake Superior. So Ontario, Minnesota, Wisconsin, or Michigan. So it rotates around various cities there, and they always have pretty nice field trips too. They usually have, of course, this year was different, but last year was canceled. This year was online, and it's typically in May each year. So
I'm
yeah,
curious.
we connect with them, and we get some speakers through them, and various things like that. And in fact, they even had a trip. They had a field trip to the Big Island of Hawaii in February of 2020, and I went on that, and I'm very glad I did, because that's about the last thing. That's the last time I've flown.
Did
we
they
got
also,
that done, a month later it might have been canceled. So
did they
I'm
also
curious-
go up, did they also go up to Iceland? Was that? the
yeah, in
group that
fact,
went-
they're planning another trip to Iceland in 22, and I might do that, even though I've been to Iceland once.
So it sounds like you've
yeah,
had a
they did
long time
Iceland.
relationship with the university.
Pardon?
Yes, that's generally
Okay.
what we work with the University of Minnesota, the department there. And the Minnesota Geological Survey is technically a branch of the University of Minnesota's geology department. So they're
Ah,
kind
that's
of linked
interesting.
up. And so we do a lot of work with those
Okay.
guys. If you ever want to get a dynamic speaker to come in, and probably Zoom it in, or he may actually be out for the deal, get Harvey Thorlefson, who's the lead of the Geological Survey. Whenever he gives a talk, everybody's on edge of their seats. The guy just flies through, and he's really fun and really enjoyable. That's one of our best lecture sets.
So it sounds like he's your Scott Burns. There's always one incredibly charismatic geologist.
So Harvey and I were in grad school together at the University of Colorado.
I
I was
see.
going to ask you guys if Harvey was still the state geologist, and he's
He
a
is.
wild and crazy guy, and very good.
And yeah,
He
well,
gave
I'm
us-
glad to know it's not just us that we think he's kind of crazy, but he's a great guy, and he's a great leader for the Geological Survey of Minnesota. We're very pleased with his work and his successes here.
Well,
But
Sheila, are
actually,
you
the
getting this
state
down?
survey, the state survey is not actually the largest employer of geologists. The Department of Natural Resources that does the water work have, I think, a few more geologists than the state survey. So we tap into those people as well for our lectures. And then we have several different colleges, McAllister here in town, and St. Thomas, and some of these other. We had Christy Curry Rogers, who's a paleontologist of note, doing dinosaur work, has spoken to us. We weren't able to record her. She didn't want it recorded because she was publishing some stuff on it, but she's one of our best speakers too.
Well, that was my next question was, when COVID hit, how did your club respond in terms of your lectures, field trips, and other meetings?
We basically shut down. As soon as that happened, we had to shut down because the university shut down, and we couldn't do anything. So we postponed everybody and moved everybody's lectures back to the next year, the ones that could make it. And Greg Brick, who's going to lead us off, is going to be one that we've been postponing like 2-3 times because of this COVID thing. So we're going to hopefully we'll be back to more normal here in the fall for his lecture. But yeah, we basically had to shut down, and our field trip planning ended, and so we just weren't able to do much last year. So it's been a complete, but it also forced us to go out and reach out and hit other places. I thought this is going to be a great opportunity to hear people from Oregon. Normally we wouldn't fly somebody in from Oregon to give us a lecture on that. So here's a great opportunity for us to hear other parts of the country. So I'm going to take full advantage of this. That's why it's like North Carolina, and other New Madrid and stuff like that. So I'm very, very pleased with, and hopefully maybe we're going to keep some sort of a hybrid of this now that we've done it. And again, we've tried to put things on YouTube, and if other groups like this, because of this, we're starting to talk to other groups, and it's really doing very well.
Yeah, I think for us as well, it's really broadened our, I mean, we've got folks here from Phoenix, from California, and from Minnesota. The biggest tent that our club has ever had. So we hope we can continue that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I think I interrupted. Dave, were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, Steve kind of misspoke when he said we shut down. Our last 3 or 4 lectures of spring of 2020 were canceled. I mean, there was no time to adapt. But we did we had a full lecture schedule for our fall of 20 and winter spring of 21. It was all done remotely, of course. And Steve did a very good job as he's putting together. We got somebody from Iowa. We got somebody from I think various states around here. So it's a great opportunity. And as he said, he's continuing the same thing in the fall of getting remote lecturers that normally we wouldn't have. And as I said, we've recorded a fair number of those. So I don't think they're all on our YouTube channel yet. But if you go to our website, which will lead you to the YouTube channel, you can see what's there.
And do you rely on social media at all of any sort?
We have a Facebook page. I don't usually go on Facebook. I don't think Zuckerberg needs any of my money. But Teresa Tweet, one of our members, kind of runs the Facebook page there, but I don't really go on that very often.
We actually put a lot of links on the Facebook page. I'd say we put 2 or 3 or 4 links a week to various things that I'm one that puts stuff out there, things that are of interest. And the other thing, as liaison officer, there was a lot of online opportunities around the world essentially this past year. And so people would send me their ideas or links to various things or various events. And then I would send out an email to the membership once a week or however often it made sense of what these opportunities were. So if people wanted to sign up and listen in, they could do that.
Well, we have a pretty good active Facebook community as well. So that's one thing we can do is we can share your videos and we can hook up through Facebook. One of the nice things about the Facebook group is it connects us with a larger community of especially geology students at Portland State and other folks from the Oregon Agate and Mineral Society and the mineral societies in Oregon generally. So that's
well, let me also toss in a plug for another group. We have the Minnesota Mineral Club, which is a different group. We'll have a link on our page if you do that. They're the ones who really do the rock collecting. We do more of the geology, so to speak, and the Minnesota Mineral Club does mostly the rock collecting. And they have a show every year. It used to be down in Cottage Grove in October. I think they moved out to State Fairgrounds, and they get fossil and mineral collection. In Minnesota, our big stuff is agates. Lake Superior agates are huge, and in fact, I'm going to step away from the camera for a second. Dave, you want to fill that in for a minute?
Because that was my next question. Everything here is basalt. Well, not quite everything, but you've got some pretty old geology out there. So tell us about what we could see if we were in your neighborhood.
Well, one thing you can see, I don't know if you can see this.
I'm going to show you.
See that?
You want to?
That's a Lake Superior agate. Weighs about 1.25 pounds.
Wow.
I found that near my house here in Woodbury. It forms near Lake Superior, and then the glaciers picked them up and moved them down here to Woodbury, where pretty much right across the street from my house here. And Dave can pick up he lives not too far from me. He's picked up agates too. But you see the size of that one? Here's my hand, and there's the agate.
So for our
we don't
new
find
members
many of these, believe me, but that's
for our new members and for me also. How do those agates form?
When you have a basalt, or as igneous rock is flowing out of the ground, there's gases in it, and of course you've seen pictures of Hawaii, for example. You get the crust that forms on top. What that does is it seals up. Any gases inside can't leak out to the air. So you end up with big holes in the lava chamber. Then over time, they start filling up with minerals. They kind of go in layer by layer, almost like tree rings, and they build up circular patterns. There's still debate as to how that actually happens, but you get these agates that form over time from basically holes in lava
Holes in the
that
basalt. Okay.
like I say, as you've seen the pictures of Hawaii, you see the black crust, but underneath it you have the flowing mineral, and that's where the gases are trapped and can't get out. So,
And I
and you
think we
guys know
have
more
something
about-
we have something similar here with our Columbia River basalts, that
Yeah.
at least where they erode out at the coast, I know that we've got some agates that.
I'm sure that you guys get plenty of them out there because you have more volcanics than we have. We haven't had a volcano here in a couple of years yet, I guess.
Although I haven't seen an agate that size.
Yeah,
And I think you got some older stuff from the Craton down there as well, don't you?
we have what's it? I think it's 3.6 billion, something like that. Is one of the oldest rocks in Minnesota and in the world, actually, when they first discovered it. And the up in the northern part of the state, but this one portion exposes a bunch of rock because there was a glacial lake in the northwestern quarter of the state, and when it drained, it cut through a bunch of very, very old rock in the Minnesota River Valley. Look at the state of Minnesota, you'll see the Minnesota River Valley. Along the flanks of that valley are some very old rocks that have been exposed, including something called the Morton Gneiss. And if you look at building stones in your area, you'll probably see buildings with Morton
yes, we
gneiss
do.
on the side. And they'd all quarried from an area that's about the size of a football field. It's not very big in terms of the quarrying stuff. They're still active down there. They're still working down there and cover the outside of a lot of buildings. I do a walking tour through downtown St. Paul, and one of the highlights is stopping in at a couple places where the Morton gneiss shows up. I don't have that right in front of me, but I think the oldest of the Morton gneiss is 2.6 billion. You'll see three phases in the Morton gneiss. If you look at the side of the building, you'll see three phases. There's a white phase, there's a black phase, and a red phase. The oldest is the white. I believe it's 2.6 billion. The black is 1.5 and the red is 1.3, if I remember correctly. I'll have to dig that out someplace. And if you look at it carefully, you can see cross-cutting relationships, and it's kind of interesting. Once you start staring at it long enough, you start seeing these different phases in it. One of our experts at it has retired recently, but he gave us a good write-up on it for my walking tour downtown St. Paul. If you're interested, I could forward that on to you guys.
Well, I'm going to share a screen here because we also do a walking tour, and there it is. Can you repeat again the different phases? Because I would like to learn them. I'm sorry.
All right.
Now we're all looking at the same thing. So what are we
All
seeing
right.
there?
You can see there's some white specks in there. And I'm going to click on some things and let's see if I can find the deals. If you give me a minute or two, I hope I can find it. There are white specks in there. That's the oldest rock in there. And I think it's 2.5 billion in age. I don't remember exactly.
You said
let's see here.
3.6 earlier. Is that the?
That's a different area close by,
Okay.
about 10 miles away. But it's not. I've got to find that here.
So we can
I've
see
got
three
it here
different
somewhere.
phases. There's pink and there's black
There's-
and there's.
There's a pink and there's a white, and there's the black is the second oldest, which is I think 1.5. And then you'll see the red, which is younger still. It's at 1.2, if I remember right. I can't find my St. Paul walking tour guidebook here.
We should compare notes sometimes because you're much closer to the actual source of that wonderful rock. So, and I'd
Yeah,
love to see what
I will try to send. Okay, that's not what I'm looking for.
Well, Steve
I'll
said.
try to send you my walking tour description when I can find it here. It's buried on my computer somewhere. I'll send it on to somebody and you'll see the description that was written up by Terry Beerbohm, a retired Minnesota geologist on that.
So on a
So-
normal year before a pandemic, what kind of field trip schedule did you have?
Are you
I mean,
asking,
how long and how local and that sort of thing?
are you asking the Geological Society of the Oregon Country?
Yes.
Yes,
Well, let's see, Sheila and Scott and Clark, you can join in on this conversation. We do a certain amount of local metro trips. So we do a downtown Buildingstone tour a couple times a year. We had a bike tour along the Willamette and also some tours of the local volcanic buttes here in Eastside Portland. But then in addition to that, Sheila and Clark, you want to join in and comment on the other field trips?
Well, what we try to do, we usually have field trips around the Pacific Northwest. And so that includes Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and so forth. What we've done more recently is tried to do more local, some more local trips. And so is that what you?
Yeah, I'm just curious. And we do similar, I mean, we do trips, we do some trips that are half-day trips, just, a single day or maybe a full day. And we do some that maybe a little further away that are 3 or 4 days.
Right.
In the past, we did one that followed the southern part of the San Andreas Fault one time. So
Oh,
it just happened that the brother of one of our members wrote a book about the San Andreas Fault. He lives out there. And he led us on it. So that was nothing better than having the author lead the field trip. And so we do sometimes go, and those trips tend to be about a week long when we go that far out, the far field.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
all right. Well, Steve and Dave, it's delightful to have you here, and I hope this is a relationship that can continue. I think we have a lot to learn, one club to another, and certainly a lot of value in just and making the connections. So thank you for joining us today. Stick around. Sheila's going to give us a little demonstration, and then we have our grad student Andrew Dunning has his geology news segment, which is about 12 minutes that he's presented on video that will be at the end of the hour. So Sheila, do you have is your document camera ready?
thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
good to have you and join us again. It's one of the
Join
nice
us.
things about the whole COVID experience is we've been able to do more things online and reach out to people farther away, and that's been great. Yeah, good. Paul, what was I going to talk about?
Well, you have a nice demonstration piece that you were going to do. I think one of the things that came up last month when I was talking about the Portland Basin is this idea of a pull-apart basin. And I tried to illustrate it with some diagrams, and sometimes I wave my hands. But I think you had something that you wanted to show us to illustrate a little bit more sort of graphically how a pull-apart basin works, and maybe some of the other fault systems as well. That's what we talked. That's about what we talked about anyway. If you want to do something different, that's fine.
Okay, well, I kind of lost where I was at. I was paying attention to everybody else, and I wasn't sure. Why don't you go ahead and
With
play
Andrew's-
Andrew's
okay.
thing, and then I'll get kind of centered here.
All right, that's just fine here. So I will
Okay.
share the screen. And where are we? There we go.
Hi, my name is Andrew Dunning, and I'm going to present this month's Geology News segment. This is a segment I've been doing for a little over a year now for GSOC, and this is the first one. I'm recording this one beforehand because I am leaving for my research field work for my master's degree in about 20 minutes. So I'm recording this, getting this out and sent off to Paul, and by the time you see this, I will be in the Strawberry Mountains doing some earthquake research. But let's get right down to it. This is for the month of July of 2021. I'm going to start with earthquakes because I'm an earthquake geologist, and they're very interesting to me, and they're one of the few sort of geologic events that is guaranteed to happen any month of the year. So the biggest earthquake to happen around the world in the last month was a magnitude 6.5 in the Kermadec Islands off the northern coast of New Zealand. This is an aftershock of a magnitude 8.0 earthquake, subduction zone earthquake that occurred in a remote area of ocean, which was a very exciting day for me. And in North America, in California, we had a magnitude 6.0 in the Little Antelope Valley, which was widely felt across California. There was very little damage reported, but it is the third significant earthquake in the Walker Lane tectonic structure in 2 years. I'll talk a little bit more about that right now. It's been followed by dozens of aftershocks, and you can still see all through Eastern California here. This is the Walker Lane and Eastern California shear zones. These are almost all aftershocks from previous earthquakes, including this most recent one located here. There is sort of typical background seismicity all through Western California, as well as along the Blanco fracture zone and the Gorda-Mendocino triple junction, as well as other pockets of seismicity here and there. This Puerto Rico seismicity down here is very interesting, and I hadn't noticed it, but it really has been going on since a December through January of 2020 earthquake swarm, which culminated in a magnitude 6.4 that caused widespread damage. And this seismicity, some of these earthquakes are felt by residents of Puerto Rico, and is probably a source of great anxiety for the people that live there. As far as volcanoes go, we got eruptions continuing. Oh, I forgot to edit this. Kilauea has stopped erupting, which is very sad for me. But the eruptions are continuing at the Fagradalsfjall volcano in Iceland, and there's 45 other volcanoes that are exhibiting activity across the world. A number of earthquakes have been detected near Mauna Loa and Kilauea on the Big Island. However, these are mostly related to crustal subsidence from the weight of the Hawaiian Islands depressing the oceanic crust rather than any volcanic activity. And as of just a couple of days ago, there was an earthquake swarm at Yellowstone volcano. Now, earthquake swarms are really common in Yellowstone, and this one is definitely part of background activity for the volcano. And these are primarily due to things like groundwater moving underground, as well as other tectonic forces, rather than the volcano itself. This is not a sign of impending volcanic activity in the Yellowstone area. This swarm, at last I checked, had detected 141 earthquakes. This was 5 days ago on, that was Friday. So that's going to be Friday, the 16th was when this swarm mostly got going. And these were all located under Yellowstone Lake here. If you're familiar with the Yellowstone National Park, Yellowstone Lake is the largest alpine lake in North America and is also where a lot of these earthquake swarms are centered. I'm going to move on to some recent research that's been published. And I'm going to start with this piece about asymmetrical growth of the Earth's inner core. There's a lot I learned in this article. So these researchers used the way seismic waves are diffracted and refracted through the interior of the Earth to study the structure of the interior of the Earth, because seismic waves are refracted based on temperature and viscosity and density of material deep inside the Earth. So their recent analysis suggests that the core is growing more rapidly along the eastern side of the equator in this dark area in this figure than elsewhere. However, gravity in the way the Earth is rotating evens a lot of that material out. So the inner core, which is the part that's growing, is made of crystallized, primarily iron and nickel. So that's as the inner core, the outer core, which is mostly liquid, cools and crystallizes over time. These iron and nickel crystals are sort of accumulating in the solid inner core. And that's what's growing slowly over time. However, something I didn't know was that these findings suggested that the inner core is comparatively young. So just over the amount of time that we've been observing the inner core, its mass has changed based on seismic wave velocities. And we can extrapolate the rate of that change to work backwards and estimate that the inner core is only between 500 million and 1.5 billion years old, which is a lot younger than I was expecting. And this gives interesting implications for the geodynamo, the Earth's magnetic field, and how that all works deep inside the Earth. So the magnetic field, we think, is primarily driven by the inner core rotating through the liquid outer core. But if the inner core is only a third the age of the Earth, and we've had a magnetic field since about 3 billion years ago, that provides doorways for future research to better understand the origins of the geodynamo. Speaking of the origins of geologic processes, here's an interesting piece about the origin of subduction zones. Now, the origin of subduction really is pretty poorly understood. I mean, we have good ideas, but concrete evidence and models are sort of fuzzy. So these researchers used the geologic history of the South Island of New Zealand, which suggested that pre-existing weaknesses from strike-slip zones and buoyancy differences between the crust and the oceanic, the continental crust and the oceanic crust are a factor in the origin of these subduction zones. So this particular subduction zone in New Zealand is the result of extended weakened crust from a failed rift zone, and this provided the conditions for the initiation of a subduction zone based on these density differences, because oceanic crust is much, much more dense than continental crust. I'm going to zoom in on this figure here just so you can get a good idea of what's going on. So originally, we had a failed rift zone here between the Australian plate, and this is the South Island of New Zealand. This is the oceanic crust. There's this rift zone here that extended. This is the early Oligocene 30 million years ago. We have this big basin here and a failed rift extending up this way. Over time, this began to sort of unzip in a way that favored strike-slip motion along this basin. And the way this rift system got rotated in this strike-slip motion shearing forced the oceanic crust to begin subducting underneath New Zealand here. So a very interesting sequence of events, and I think this will have interesting implications for systems such as our own. I learned today about Mega Lake Paratethys, which was a huge inland sea, far larger even than the Mediterranean Ocean, which filled a large basin in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. The Mediterranean Sea and this Tethys Basin is a remnant of the Tethys Sea, which dates from Pangaea's time. But Lake Paratethys existed about 12 million years ago to about 5 million years ago, and is the result of continental collisions from Africa and the Indo-Australian plate colliding up here with the Eurasian plate. And these mountain belts here in Iran and Turkey and the Mediterranean and Northern Africa impounded this huge inland sea. It existed for about 7 million years and contained 1.77 million cubic kilometers of water, which is just a colossal volume of liquid. But climate shifts over geologic time, we're talking 7 million years here, caused the lake to gradually shrink, leaving behind large deposits of salt and sediments and marine organisms. This lake held a vast assemblage of marine organisms and probably sustained a lot of megafauna, such as early elephants, which migrated out of this area as the lake gradually disappeared. The end of this lake probably came when it drained out the modern-day Aegean Sea out this way, which the article's author, Dan Palku, said it likely created an impressive waterfall as it drained into the ancient Mediterranean basin. And staying on the Asian theme, here's a giant rhinoceros ancestor that was discovered in China. Parasarathium linsianse, I'm not a biologist, is a new mega rhino discovered in China. They discovered a completely preserved skull. I saw some pictures of it. It was quite pretty. That was dated to 26.5 million years ago. It is likely the second or third largest known land mammal ever. It reached about 7 meters above the ground and browsed trees like giraffes do, though unlike giraffes, their whole body was lifted above the ground. These are obviously quite large animals. Even though it looks more like a horse, it is indeed related closer to rhinoceroses. Moving back to the northwest, here's an interesting piece about magma chambers on the Juan de Fuca Ridge. Recent seismic imaging of the Juan de Fuca Ridge showed vertically stacked magma chambers below the rifting axis. So the Juan de Fuca plate is rifting from the Pacific plate on the Juan de Fuca Ridge. There's a spreading center there where the new crust is being created. And generally, a thin lens of magma right at this rift axis is what's driving volcanoes and volcanism and the creation of new oceanic crust. But these seismic images that these researchers found discovered additional magma chambers underneath this thin lens of magma, which is feeding shorter-lived, larger volcanoes and is a major part of the crustal formation of the creation of new oceanic crust. These magma chambers are very shallow, only 1 to 8 kilometers below the surface, whereas to compare to, say, Mount Hood, the magma chamber doesn't even begin until about 10 kilometers down. So these very shallow magma chambers are really the interface between the mantle and the ocean, where new crust is being created all the time. And that's all I have for this month. Sorry, it's a little bit shorter than usual, but I've really got to get going on my research trip, and I will likely see you in person in August. Thank you very much for watching this month's Geology News. My name is Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. It's very hard not to interrupt him and ask him questions. Applaud for him. That raised a number of questions for me, including whether the magnetic field, the Earth's magnetic field, only started between 1.5 and 0.5 billion years old. Does anyone here have an opinion about that or know of this research? Scott's shaking his head no, so. Well, Sheila, are you interested in carrying on the conversation?
I need to take a little break.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Well, we're reaching about the top of our hour, so this is sort of where we usually break off and turn off the recording and then just let people sort of, converse amongst ourselves. So unless there's other announcements, I want to remind people that I put into the chat, and I will do it again if anyone came in late, the Meetup poll. So we're still wondering if you feel like this is the best time for the online or this would be a good time for the in-person. We're going to be doing both the in-person at the Woodstock Deli, and we'll be doing the online, and we'll, some people are saying have them on the same day, different days, different day of the week or a different time. Give us your opinion. It's a short poll, and you can also include any other opinions you have about our use of the Meetup platform or topics that you'd like to see or other aspects about the format. Any other questions? I'm going to turn off the recording, I think, and just let people hang out for a while.
Andrew's